These are some of my most favorite boots, and honestly probably my most worn boot, but there's some issues that I've had over the last 8 years owning these that we finally fixed with this collaboration. Leather lining, repairable mock toe stitch, fiber mouthsole. Finally, the Rose, Anvil, and Limbs collaboration, the perfect boot is done. Drops on Thursday, so get on the limited edition email list. You get early access, everything you need to know to order. So check out the Limbs collaboration. I bought 3 of the new Air Jordan 1 Retro 85 OG Bred band from 3 of the top reselling sites, StockX, GOAT, and eBay, to pit them head to head, not just to see which resale sites are fastest, best quality, and if any of them sold as dupes, but also to find out the truth about the new OG Breds by cutting them in half, running through all of our tests to really figure out, are the Bred 2025s $100 better than the normal AJ1s? Does it actually have thicker and better materials like they claim? Can it top the king of AJ1 leathers, the SBB? Or is this just more overhyped junk from Nike cashing in on the nostalgia of the shoe for people who don't know any better? That's what we're gonna figure out. So why is this shoe, this specific shoe, so important to people? Well, the story of the Bred Jordans originates with the original AJ1's release in 1985. It was the first signature shoe of Michael Jordan that helped create the Nike brand, but they were in violation of the NBA uniform standards and policies. So Nike, being the smart businessmen, decided to seize the opportunity and paid the fines and launched the iconic banned advertising campaign, which absolutely propelled this shoe into legendary status. And now 40 years later in 2025, after innumerable re-releases and the alleged decline year after year of the AJ1's quality, well, they've allegedly reverse engineered the original 1985 model, celebrating the 40th anniversary with limited quantities and key improvements that include the accurate 1985 silhouette, the premium materials that they say the shoe is made of higher quality, thicker leather and sturdy rubber sole, and some other small claims to say that this is a better version of the regular Jordan that you get. So then what is this shoe? Well, the brand is Air Jordan. The style is the 1 Retro 85 OG Bred Band 2025. We weighed all 3 shoes just to start that initial look to see if any of these are dupes. And they're all within half an ounce of each other, so right around 1 pound. And the original retail of these was $250. The other AJ1s roughly around $170, $185. On sale, you can get it for a lot cheaper, some down to $150. And all 3 of these are made in China. So now let's start looking at which of these resale sites was a better one for the purchasing process. For instance, when did we order them and when did we actually get them? Well, all of these were ordered on September 25th, and the arrival dates was the soonest came in with eBay and GOAT at October 2nd, and StockX lagging behind by 6 days on October 8th. So already 1 point to eBay and to GOAT. This was an interesting one to me because I get so sick of checking out at websites sometimes. I'm like, good Lord, how many different things I gotta fill in, how many questionnaires, how many pop-ups I gotta sort through. So the actual time to purchase, StockX, it took almost 3 minutes to purchase. GOAT, it took 1 minute 45 seconds, and eBay was the fastest at 1 minute 10 seconds. So eBay is looking like it's shining when it comes to the actual purchasing process. But what did we actually pay for these? 'Cause that's all I care about. You know, at the end of the day, I'll wait an extra 6 days if I can save a little bit of money. Well, this is where it hurts. And this is the part where I need your help to make sure this video does well. So give us a like, give us a subscribe, because the StockX pair, even though they retail for already a steep $250, we bought them for $405. Plus, if you add in all the extra fees and all the other garbage that these sites put on top, StockX costs an extra $80. So the total price of StockX was $484. GOAT, on the other hand, a little bit more expensive. It was listed at $424, but the total price was cheaper because it was only $50 upcharged with all the other garbage they throw on top, with a total price of $474. And then the absolute cheapest was eBay. $400 even for the listing price, only $48 in additional fees. So eBay was the fastest and the most affordable out of the bunch. And then to something that doesn't really matter to me, but it matters to a lot of sneakerheads, the actual box condition. StockX, the box was a little bit beat up. Then GOAT and eBay boxes are about the same, but eBay, they added in some of those little air packets to help protect it in shipping. And so eBay, once again, leading the charge in quality of actual consumer experience. And as for something that's completely out of my wheelhouse, looking at all the little teeny stitches and patterning to really see if you can identify somehow if it's a fake or not. We'll add some pictures to get your guys' help, but to us, they looked identical across the board. The only thing you could point to was the GOAT has a couple more sharp angles and lines. Maybe it's just a manufacturing difference. I don't know. We'll see if we get it cut in half if there's anything else that's pointing it to potentially being a dupe. To me, that could just be chalked up to quality control differences and manufacturing differences. So for the actual sites initially, it looks like eBay is doing really, really well. But are any of these different in material? Do they have different qualities of material to point to the other fakes? And are they better quality than some of the other AJ1s that we've cut apart? Well, as for the Bred 2025s, pretty similar leather across the board, coming in about 1.7 to 1.8 on both colors of the leather. Compare that to the other Jordans that we've cut apart, and these regular Jordans are just a little bit thinner, more like 1 to 1.5 millimeters thick. So very small differences, but you can still tell it there is a difference. It's a lot stiffer, it's a lot hardier, and some of that comes from the extra thickness. but more of that comes from the finish on top. Because if there's one complaint that I have about Nike is they're notorious for putting heavy coated plastic on top of their so-called premium leathers. I'm like, if it's premium, why are you putting plastic on top? So to figure out if there is plastic coating on these, we'll let the flame decide, so we burned them. And as you can see, it does have some sort of finish on top. Nike could spin it and say, well, we want it more rigid, so we put that plastic coating on top to make the leather more rigid. There's other ways to make leather rigid besides throwing plastic on top. So pretty on par for Nike, but for $250, that's insane to me that they still have a plastic coated leather that's maybe 0.2, 0.3 millimeters thicker than the regular leather, and they're claiming it's premium and so much better and all these different things. And it does give it its even texture and tone and color that people demand from this style and this like basically sneakerhead sneakers. But the problem is all sneakerheads hate the creasing, and the plastic coating is a big part of the reason why cheap leathers and cheap shoes crease so easily and so fast. It's because it's not the leather that's creasing, it's the plastic on top. Is the leather underneath the plastic at least good? Well, we looked at the cross section. It looks like it has a lot of the grain on the inside. You compare it to these other leathers, and I don't think it's quite as sanded down, so it does look like it's a more premium cut of leather. And we've seen some brands literally put a plastic coat on a piece of suede and try to pass it off as grain leather, but this really is a grain leather. It looks good. But did we find any fake leather on a $250 shoe? Well, we burned every single one of these panels, and there is $250. You get a fake Nike swoosh. I'm like, come on. The fact that there's any fake leather on this is just a crime to me. So now that we've seen every aspect of the leather and the quality, are the Bred 2025s significantly better like they claim than these other leathers that you see in the regular AJ ones? Not really. It is better. You know, it's thicker, it's got a few things, but I honestly don't think to the untrained eye, anyone would really be able to tell a difference. Performance-wise, it is gonna be more rigid with the Bred 2025s, so it is kind of a harken back to the originals. But it's honestly, like, it's not enough for them to claim, this is way better, we've improved it. It's like, slightly better. But is it better than the king of leather, the SBBs? And if you guys want to see a full breakdown of this, I think this would be a really interesting comparison. I still think the SBBs wipe the floor with the Bred 2025s by a long shot. I think there's a bigger difference between these two than there is between these two. But what about the inside? Because we checked all the insides of the various resale sites and they look identical. The exact same materials, exact same lining differences, the canvas on the inside with this more jersey material in the collar. But is that collar actually that much more stiff and rigid? Comparing it to the SBBs, well, the SBBs are significantly softer than the Bred 2025s. The white pair, the all white, it's about the same. And then this pair is somewhere in between. So it is definitely thicker, it's more hardy, it's gonna take the shape more, it's gonna take a little bit longer to break in. But all the materials on the Bred are the same. But is it the same as the other Jordans? Well, Jordans are notorious for having a lot of different materials, and we have one with canvas, we have one with different material, the jersey materials. And so it looks like it's the exact same fabrics through and through. I don't see any differences whatsoever. But what about the insoles? The Bred 2025s, it is a nice insole. It's dual density, open cell foam with a closed cell foam underneath, giving you a couple different densities to squish. Compare that to the regular AJ ones where it's about as cheap as it gets. It's just the material, the lining with some really cheap open cell foam. So at least that's better. That's an easy thing to point to, but it's like the most affordable thing to make better. The thing that I'm looking for is what's underneath the insole, because that I think is where they're gonna actually make the shoe feel different and perform different, because the original AJ one was allegedly board lasted. Because basketball shoes, they needed to be a little bit more firm, have a nice firm foundation, some rigidity and support, because it was an athletic shoe, not just a put around town shoe. So what's underneath the Bred 2025s? Board lasted. That is a nice slab of almost like boot style lasting material called fiberboard. And if we look at these other Jordans, this one Strobel stitched, this one Strobel stitched, but the white one is board lasted. I completely forgot about that. And so even that's not that different. For 250 bucks, you know, this performance version, more like the original, once again, it's not that different. So it's looking like these OG Bred 2025s are not so different, especially compared to like, we cut like 4 or 5 of these apart. Aside from a couple few aesthetic differences, minor material differences, I'm very underwhelmed for a $250 reproduction shoe that's supposed to be like the original and different from everything else, but we haven't cut them apart. We haven't seen the most important part of the shoe where all these brands hide all the differences, all the corners cut, the inside. So let's cut these in half and really figure out, are any of these dupes? Did any of these resale sites send us a dupe? Are they actually that much better? Is there anything hidden on the inside? That's what we're gonna figure out. These are all of our handmade wallets that we sew right here in the shop, cut out right here in the shop, and we don't use sewing machines. We do it the old school way with the saddle sewing technique that they use to make saddles instead of the sewing machine. It's one piece of thread, 2 needles, and weaving in and out of the thread all the various colors from tan, light brown, medium brown, dark brown, and black, but more importantly, the various wallets. So starting with the smallest and the first, the one that really launched the brand on Kickstarter, the Claude wallet, 2 pockets, 1 shorter pocket and a bigger pocket behind with the rolled edge so you can hold more cards. Same thing with the slim wallet, it's just a redesign of this. Same concept, 2 pockets, rolled edge for the bigger pocket. Then the Big Daddy version of the Slim, the SBB, that we actually made this pattern for the shattered backboard cut in half way early in the YouTube days, but it has 2 card pockets in the front and that bigger cash pocket with the rolled edge. Then to the Swayze, the one I use probably most every single day. So it's got 4 card pockets, so you can really partition off and separate your cards. And if that's not enough card room and you want a little cash room, you can go to the Togo. 2 big pockets where you can store cash folded once, and 4 card pockets. If you're old school, you want the traditional bifold. Same concept here, but you've got 6 cash pockets with these little hidden pockets back here and that cash slot there, traditional bifold. And the biggest daddy of them all, the travel wallet, a little spot for your boarding pass and your passport, your ID, all your credit cards, all the junk that you're gonna accumulate on the trip, even this little hidden pocket right there. So check these all out below. Okay, we got all 3 of them cut in half just so that we can see if there is a difference between these resale sites. And so it was like $1,500 worth of shoes just to show you guys if there is a difference. So if you don't mind, give us a subscribe, give us a like. Any way you can support this video is how we'll be able to do more of them and really be able to have these expensive videos, because they're always a gamble. And your guys' support in helping these go at least somewhat viral is the only way we can continue to do it. So help us out. Thank you guys. And now let's see what's inside the StockX. And then to eBay, and then finally to GOAT. Are there any differences on the inside between the 3 resale sites? Looking at the heel counter, looking at thicknesses of materials, looking at how the materials are used. And one thing that's really, really nice that I did not anticipate, that like, gotta shout out Nike for this one, a true double layer at the toe. Every single other Nike I think that we've ever seen that has this little toe bumper, it's this red leather would stop right where this black leather begins. But as you can see on all 3 of those, it goes all the way down to that sidewall stitch, locking all that together. That's maybe not worth $100 extra, but you gotta give it to Nike for doing that, because that is probably the true original way of doing it, and nobody would even know the difference. Obviously we cut them in half, but most people are not cutting their shoes in half to see if that's even real. So you gotta give props to Nike for that. That is cool. And there is some materials in here that are different. You know, you got that thicker foam that's more rigid. You've got that slightly thicker leather that is a pretty good cut of leather that's a lot firmer, but it has that plastic top coating. So before we compare them to the other Jordans, which site is the best to buy from? Did any of them sell any dupes or fakes? No, they all look real to me. You know, that one was maybe a little bit off, so you guys let me know that are really into this. Is there any differences you see that it might point to it being a dupe? I don't see anything. Which was the most affordable and fastest? eBay. You know, eBay tied for the fastest, was the most affordable. It had the best packaging. It was the easiest buying experience. So eBay won that pretty clearly. So then what's actually different about the 2025 Breds compared to these others on the inside? Well, like I said, this one is board lasted. You know, the all white pair is board lasted, but there's a very big difference between these, because you can see this fiberboard on the Bred 2025s is a lot thicker, it's a lot hardier, and it's gonna perform that way. You know, this is a really cheap fiberboard. It's still Texon, you can still see the Texon logo, but it's really thin, it's not glued very well, where this one is glued better, it has better thickness to it, and so it's just gonna perform slightly better. Still, once again, it's not that big of a difference, but at least it's a difference. The air units look exactly the same, and you compare that to a more Strobel stitch construction, and you can just see the difference in flexibility, but also just in how it's made. But other than that, it's about the same. You know, there's a few things we talked about that are better, but not that much better. In a vacuum, are they worth $250? Not even close. I don't know how Nike ever even got to that price point. The shoe is literally twice the price that it should be. And I think people might disagree to some, oh, they're doing small quantities, it's Nike. They can do more quantity. They can do this cheaper. This to me is a clear cash grab by Nike. Like, how in the world do you get to $250 and $100 price difference between these? That blows me away. And that's not even mentioning the resale price. So is it still worth buying from resale sites now that we've seen 3 of the top resale sites? We completely dissect them material by material to see if there's any differences, timed the orders, did everything we could. To me, it is astonishing that people pay $450 for what's essentially a $100 shoe. And honestly, it should be under $100. They've been making this for 40 years. I can't imagine they have any reason for scalability issues to charge $250 for this, because there's no inherent value to any of these sneakers. And honestly, I'm glad to see that the resale is slowly slowing down and people are starting to realize that these are not worth the price. It's not an investment. It's borderline a scam at the end of the day, especially with all these these brands going out of their way to let all these resellers just gobble up all the initial inventory and then immediately put it on the resale sites. The average person can't even get a pair of these at the retail price, and Nike knows that. And yet they still double down and still do all this stuff to allow these resellers to just gobble up an already overpriced shoe and then sell it for twice the price to the people that want them the most. And I really hope one day sneakerheads realize that they are the product, not the actual shoe. And I think this consumers should start demanding these giant rich corporations to price their shoes fairly and honestly and deal with the resale sites appropriately. And I think they're a part of the industry that will never go away, but they're way out of control. Can't imagine this trend keeps going on for another 5 years. So all said and done, the differences on the Bred 2025s are very marginal. To me, it doesn't get anywhere close to justifying the price difference between the Bred 2025 and any other AJ1, especially the resale sites. But now we know that you still can trust them to some degree, at least for us buying 3 random pairs, hoping for the best. They all seem to be authentic, but I'm not that deep into every little teeny aspect and detail. So let me know, you deep sneakerheads, did I miss anything? Are any of these dupes, do they look like dupes to you? And let me know what I missed here. Am I missing an angle on this? So do what you will with that information. Obviously, it's your own decision. I just wanted to give you a unique perspective on this from a more material standpoint, because so many other YouTubers and sneaker reviewers, they just talk about the hype, they talk about this, and you're not even talking about the actual functionality of the shoe. And so let me know what you think, and thank you guys for your support. Give us a like, give us a subscribe, because this was a very expensive video to try to bring some transparency, not just into the actual shoes and the shoe brands, but the resale sites. So thank you guys. See ya.